Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today I finally have the Grievous story ready for you. Now the way this is gonna work is I'm gonna give you guys kind of a summary. So I have like my details here. I have it all like written out pretty much. Um, but basically I'm gonna like summarize it. That way I prevent people from fucking ripping my story. But it's strong, honestly. Like if you were to do a Grievous project, I'd say this is probably the first one that you do, honestly, because it explains 1 minute. Because it basically explains like his origin, because canonically right now, I mean, his first media appearance is in Clone Wars. Like, it's literally like, boom, Grievous is here, he's this guy, but we don't know what happened before. I mean, we know little details. We know, like, okay, he crashed. He was this warrior on Kalish, he crashed, and now he got put back together with mechanical parts. He trained a little bit with Dooku, and now he's the leader of the droid army, right? So it's like we have the details, the tiny details, but we don't have the full story, right? So it's like, okay, we get, it's like, okay, cool. Like when you're watching Clone Wars, then it's fine because he's not the main character. But as someone who's really loved that character since I was a child, that was my first favorite Star Wars character was Grievous. I was like, we need to do something about this. I was like, I'm gonna, write this up right now, and I did, and actually, it turned out pretty good. And especially if you read the whole thing, which I might end up just reading the whole thing, but we'll see. But I think it's better if I just explain it, just let you know kind of what's going on here. But yeah, so we're gonna start. So starting off, Chapter 1, Rebirth. So we're on Vasek, which is the planet where Grievous has his base in Clone Wars. Obviously, it's not quite decorated yet because he just crashed. And basically, now he's a mess because he crashed, and he is kind of this mess of a thing at that point. He's almost fucking destroyed. So Dooku took him from the planet he crashed on, and he shipped him to Vasek. And basically, they had a little separatist, well, at that point, that's before the formation of the separatists, but Dooku and Palpatine had a little post there, and they basically took him there, and he starts getting put together. There was no interaction or anything. They just took him, and they're like, we're gonna make this guy something. And Dooku's present. Palpatine's obviously not present, but Dooku is present, and he has these droids put Grievous together, with his mechanical parts and everything. And Grievous is dealing with a lot of pain getting put together like that. And in the midst of that, we get flashes of his past. We got like flashes of his past on Kalish, and we kind of see what his life was like a little bit through these little flashes. And then we basically he gets put back together. So it's kind of like a episode 3 Vader thing, but instead of intercutting with Padme, we're intercutting with Grievous's past. Anyways, so he gets put back together, and his seat raises like Vader's. And Dooku is basically trying to mold him into this like weapon, basically this weapon of just vengeance and power. That's basically Dooku's whole purpose. And he's like, you're no longer what the hell is the name? Kwame Kamayan Jai Shalal, you're now Grievous, right? And he's very firm on that a lot, you know, and he'll repeat that because he's trying to delete Grievous's past from him. And he's like, no, now you work for me, you're my dog, right? I gave you power, which is what Grievous wanted. He wanted power and he wanted, you know, to be the strongest, right? And Dooku gave him that, but he's like, you know, now you have to repay me by working for me. So whatever was going on in your past doesn't matter anymore. You're working for me. And that's Dooku's whole thing throughout this whole story, is he's trying to brainwash Grievous into not thinking for himself anymore. And Grievous already had past experiences with Jedi, is something I wrote in here. So he already doesn't like them, because he had issues with them on Kaleesh and how they wanted to basically set up a research outpost there. And him and his people didn't like that. So, you know, he's had some bad experience with them. And then now Dooku's feeding him all these lies about the Jedi, and now his anger for the Jedi is growing even more. So now at this point, he's like just gotten these new parts. He's just learning how to walk in this new body he has. And Dooku's like, well, if you want to fight Jedi, you're going to need lightsabers. You know, he's like, that's the only way you can combat them. You don't have the Force, so a blaster won't do it. And he's basically telling him that he needs to go get them for himself, and that's how he'll prove his worth to Dooku, is by proving that he's not just some other droid who can barely wield a sword, sword thing, like what the commando droids have. So he's like, no, you need to go out and prove yourself. So Dooku literally ships Grievous off in some ship piloted by a droid to a random unnamed jungle planet. We don't name it at all, because I want the audience to feel like Grievous here, like, what the fuck, like, where are they taking me, right? And Dooku's basically like, there's Jedi, here, and you need to go take their sabers from them. And he's like, I don't know where they are exactly, but there are Jedi here, and that's how you're gonna get your weapons, and Grievous is released into the wild, like a tiger's released from a cage. And he's basically goes on this hunt, and he sees, it takes a while, but after a while, he sees this group of Jedi who's running a recon mission on this forest jungle planet. And he basically goes and follows them for hours to their camp, and he picks off the Padawans. So he waits for them to kind of split off and be on their own, and he'd take the Padawans, rip them to shreds, take their lightsabers. And he took 2. He managed to get 2, and then the Master started to realize that they're missing people. They sensed this weird presence before. They're like, there's something here, so stay watch. But then the 2 Padawans are like these little, like, young teen kids who are, reckless, and they ran off, and their masters are like, you need to get back here, whatever. And, well, they ate shit, and Grievous took the sabers. And now the masters are in high alert, so they ignite their sabers. They round up in, like, kind of a circle, backs against each other. Because, they don't know where the hell this guy's coming from. So that's like, there's 3 masters, and they circle up. And Grievous takes the sabers, and he runs away. He doesn't even bother to go get them. He just runs away. He's like, I don't even know how to use these. He's like, what the hell are these lightsabers? He runs away and lands back over at so now he gets back to his ship. He lifts off and gets a holo transmission from Dooku, and Dooku is telling him, he gives him coordinates, and this time it's to Coruscant, and he's shipped to Coruscant to the Works District, which is where Dooku fights Yaddle and Tales of the Jedi, or where, more notably, where Anakin and Obi-Wan fight Dooku and Yoda fights Dooku in Attack of the Clones. Wait, wrong. That's where Palpatine and Dooku chat after Dooku fights them in Attack of the Clones. My bad, Jesus. Yeah, so he goes there, and that's where Dooku basically, that's where the Dooku Palpatine base was, pretty much, throughout the Clone Wars. That's where they'd always meet up or whatever, because it was just way off of the radar. It was just some abandoned building that they used. So that's where Dooku took Grievous, and Dooku was surprised that he managed to get 2. He's like, wow, so you really are, something different. And then now at this point, we just see Dooku begin to learn to use a lightsaber. And it's just training sequences, basically. For a while, he's training for quite a bit. And then he's, through all sorts of different lightsaber techniques and whatever. And Dooku's, emphasizing with him that he needs to act less like a savage, and he needs to think about how he's attacking and the way he's attacking, and he's taught the different Jedi lightsaber forms, and basically in between, there's moments where, he's remembering Ronderu, who was his significant other before he got Grievousy, but when he was still Kaimean Jai Shilal or whatever the hell, back on Kalish. So he gets these, moments where he's like remembering her and remembering his life there. But then this conflict gets in, right? And it's like, no, I got this power and I'm going to serve, right? So you see that kind of conflict. But this is not a good versus evil conflict. And I want to make that clear. This is absolutely not that. This is not an Anakin Vader ripoff. His Kalish life was not, he was not a great guy. He wasn't. He was really not a great guy. He was kind of a savage. He was a savage warrior over there who, anyone who landed on his planet that wasn't from his tribe, he'd just obliterate. He was not a good guy, but still, that was his life before, and he's looking at his life now, and there's part of him that's like, this isn't really living. I'm just working for this guy. And slowly, you'll see he just gets totally brainwashed. Anyway, so after he trains for a little bit, he actually does a sparring duel with Dooku. And spars a little bit with Dooku, and there's no clear victor. And basically, Dooku just kind of stops, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to give you your first assignment now. And he's like, I need you to lead this small group of droids to this section of this string of factories on Geonosis, and you cannot let the Republic get through. He's like, they have launched an attack with new troopers, and you can't let them get through, basically. So, Dooku basically, and this is, okay, let me explain this better. So, he spars, Dooku leaves, and Grievous continues training with these droids. So, he gets a holo transmission from Dooku from Geonosis, and Dooku tells him that I have your first assignment. You need to lead a small battalion of droids to get these droid factories, basically. So then Grievous gets on a ship, goes to Geonosis, and lands and leads a very small group of droids. It's not a monstrous group. It's quite small for a separatist. Small on a separatist scale. Most separatists, you have just droids and droids and droids because they're all bad, but in this case, Dooku gave him more B2s. He gave him, just kind of higher up droids, not super high, but just a little more, a little more strength since he had a little bit. But those droid factories were considered to be pretty much defenseless by the Republic. So the Republic also sent a small number of clones over there. And there's more droids, there's a bigger group of droids than there are clones, right? So then that creates a problem for the Republic. So Grievous goes in there and just wipes the entire clone group out. Completely gone. Like, not one of them left. Not one of them even breathing. So the Republic just got these, like, weird, descriptions of this big droid with lightsabers, and they're like, what? We flip to the Jedi side for a little bit, and they're like, they're like confused. They're like, what could this be? And then we flip back and Grievous is like just going haywire, like chopping the shit out of these clones. And then they push the Republic back. So not only do they defend the line, they push the Republic back. More droid reinforcements come. And then they send 2 Jedi to check it out. And what does Grievous do? Wipes them clean. Wipes them completely clean. Like 2003 Grievous wipes them clean. So now we're at this point where there are no survivors from the Republic. No one can go back alive and report what they have seen. So Grievous is just this monstrous rumor at this point. Like, there's no, like, nothing. Like, he's a rumor. Nothing but a rumor. And yeah, so basically after this, he gathers their lightsabers. He gets 2 more lightsabers. And then he decides, I'm going to split off on my own and go get a few more so that Dooku can, so I can prove myself to Dooku even more now. So he splits off, and very stealthily, he kills even more Jedi. He kills a few more. And he takes their sabers, rips one of their cloaks, puts the lightsabers in the cloak, wraps it up, and walks it to his ship and leaves. He just leaves. And then he goes to Dooku on Geonosis, opens the satchel, throws the sabers at Dooku's feet. And is like, is this enough lightsabers for you? And Dooku's, again, he's loving this. Because he's seeing, this guy is exactly what I need. He is this monster who can be a pawn for me, and doesn't even need to be a pawn. Palpatine that doesn't matter. He can just be a pawn for me, and it's like, that's his whole thing. But obviously later we see Palpatine does get involved because, he talks to him in revenge. But yeah, basically, the moment that Grievous and Palpatine interact for the first time, Palpatine sees him and he's like, oh, he's mine now. And, Dooku's like, but that's later. So now he basically has this ceremony with like hundreds of droids on Sereno. This is after Geonosis now, and they're on Sereno and hundreds of droids, and he gets, command of the droid armies, the commander of the droid armies. So now what does Grievous do with this? He gets an ego. Grievous is always egotistical, even back to his time on Kalish. He was very egotistical. So now he's even more like, his ego's just exploding. And at this point, we see him go back to, after the ceremony, he's back on Vasek, and he kept an ancient Kalish mask, basically. And as a kind of reminder of where he came from, he looks at it one last time and he just smashes it and stomps on it. And then not only that, he walks up to a droid commander and goes, where's the Jedi? Where are the Jedi at? He's basically like, where are the Jedi at? And then this droid is like, we got intel of a post over here. Grievous goes to this little posts on a little moon, you know, very unnecessary. Like, there's no need to send troops and resources over to this little base. Like, that's just not necessary. Like, it's so unnecessary. And basically, he goes and, again, decimates the entire base. Like, blows it off of the moon, pretty much. Like, slaughters all the Jedi, wipes it completely clean. But what happens? His cover's blown. He's no longer this secret thing. A group of clones actually have their receivers on, and they record Grievous from afar. And they send it to the Jedi Council. So now, this is the really cool part. So now, they're sent this footage, and we jump to Coruscant. Then everyone's there. Mace Windu, Obi-Wan, Yoda, Ki-Adi, Plo Koon, Isla Secura. They're all there in this room. And this hologram shows up of Grievous, because they've all been called because they got this transmission. And they're just abhorred. They're like, what is this beast? You know? And they're just kind of terrified at what kind of monster this thing is, you know, and like, how could this have gone under our notice? How did we not sense anything? Whatever. And then Obi-Wan is like, well, he doesn't use the Force, clearly. And then Mace Windu's like, well, how could he have mastered a lightsaber? And he's like, well, that's something we're going to have to figure out, you know? And basically you see Obi-Wan, and then, you know, the meeting's called off after, and Obi-Wan stays in the room and looks at Grievous for a second and then goes and leaves, you know, to start their kind of relationship, you know, because they hate each other. Obi-Wan and Grievous despise each other. So that's like the start of their kind of, I wouldn't even say relationship. I'd say, I don't know, opponent something. They hate each other. But yeah, so then we go back to Grievous, and he finished wiping the planet, and Dooku's fucking pissed. So what does Dooku do? He calls Grievous, and he's like, dude, get back here right now. He's like, what have you done? He's like, Grievous is like, oh, I destroyed this base, and we wiped out so-and-so Jedi. And Grievous is like, your cover's blown, you idiot. Basically, not really that, right? I'm improvising, just get the point. And Grievous is, you know, flies back to Dooku, and he's like, I don't get what your deal is. You know, I've just wiped out tons of Jedi. We wiped out an entire base. Like, what is the problem? And Dooku just, lightning. Grievous is like, what the hell? Like, he's like, I don't know what this is. And now Grievous's motors and all his electronic parts are just spazzing and glitching. And, like, he's, like, glitching on the floor. And Dooku just keeps hitting him. And he's like, we lost 30% of the troops that you know, sent over there. We've lost tons of troops. You know, you're exposed. You're meant to be this secret warrior, and now you're exposed. You know, and it's like, you blew it. And Dooku's just pissed. And then Grievous is, you know, put on this mechanical table, and all his parts are rewired and, you know, basically just rebooted after he got electrocuted. And he starts wheezing, not coughing. The cough is from Mace Windu later on, when he punches him, or not punches him, he crushes his, like, chest in. But now Grievous is like, he has this wheeze when he breathes sometimes, because it damaged his lungs, the electric strike. And he like, kneels and apologizes to Dooku, and this is when Dooku introduces Palpatine. And then Palpatine is basically like, you're gonna be a key use in this, fight. And he's in his like game mode where he's like, oh, I'm leader of the Separatists, right? He doesn't let Grievous in on the whole secret because Grievous is a pawn. So why would you let a pawn in on like the game? You wouldn't. So, yeah. So basically, that's where we are, and then we see little flashes of him, fighting different battles, fighting clones, fighting Jedi, whatever. And basically we see now that he just, he's just this thing working for Dooku. And the final fight of the whatever you call this, the story, is the Separatists want control of Kalish. And he goes over there and massacres his own people for Dooku, because now his mind is Dooku's. So then we end on that victory, and it cuts, and that's where Grievous is starting with Clone Wars, is he's just this worker for Dooku, leading the army, whatever. But yeah, that's it. That's kind of what I did. That's my interpretation of it. And and that's how I thought of it. That's kind of how I thought of doing Grievous's origin story. And there's other ways you could do it, and that's the cool thing with Star Wars, is there's not one way to handle an unexplored chunk. There's different approaches, and obviously you can't be like Rian Johnson with Luke and like just decimate the character. But sure, there's different approaches you could have. Maybe Grievous, maybe you don't even include stuff with his home world. Maybe you don't even include that more introspective part of him. There's ways around that. You could make it like a horror movie, right? Like there's so many ways you could do that. And that's the just beautiful part about Star Wars, is it's this mythos. It's like these legends, these tall tales, and you can tell one story in a multitude of ways. This is how I would tell it, because I prefer stories that actually develop characters, progress an arc, are exciting, are big, and that's what this is. So whether you agree with basically my version or not, this does follow George's vision, and there aren't inconsistencies with anything. And if you have a question about it, then we can talk and I'll explain more elements of it. But this doesn't follow one timeline or the other. It takes a lot of things from Legends. I don't take anything from canon at all. It takes a lot of things from Legends, but for me, the only thing is canon in my, I guess, this universe is George's 6 movies and 2003 Clone Wars and 2008 Clone Wars. That's it. That's the only things that are canon. So, yeah. So that's kind of just framework, but that's it, man. And I'm telling you, it, as simple as this was, I toyed with so many different ideas, concepts, things that I could use, just methods I could use to tell this story, just so many, and then I finally finalized this one, and this, I don't know if this, this could make a film, obviously, if you expanded it and gave it more detail, and you had dialogue and you had all that shit, then sure. But it could also be just like a special, an animated special, or a live action special. Easily. For how it is right now and the length it's at right now, easily like a Tales of the whatever arc, you know? Totally. Totally could do that in like a Tales arc. Yeah, man, like it's this, yeah, making Star Wars stories is really fun, but it's also really scary and it's really challenging because it's really easy, no matter how big of a fan you are, to just accidentally, you know, mess something up. It's really easy to do that, but it's also really easy to correct your mistake. And that's the difference between us and Disney, is that we actually go back and look at our product before we finalize it, you know? So we're like, oh, we need to fix this, whatever. And yeah, but that's it. That's my Grievous story. I don't know what the hell I'll title it, but whatever the title of this video is that. But that's that. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave a like, subscribe, share. And we will get back to more normal content soon, and I will talk to you guys about our next one of these later on if you guys like it. So see you guys soon. May the force be with you always. Bye-bye.